Everyone at Mercy General knew the hierarchy. Doctors were gods, nurses were the weary angels, and Scarlett Hayes, she was just the invisible woman scrubbing instruments in the corner. They called her the Mouse because she never spoke, never fought back, and took every insult, Doctor. Preston threw at her with a blank stare. They thought she was weak. They thought she was unqualified. They were wrong. They didn't know that the hands-changing bedpans had once held the lives of Tier 1 operators in the dust of Kandahar. They were about to learn that silence isn't always submission sometimes. It's just the safety on a loaded weapon waiting to be disengaged. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room at Mercy General Hospital in Seattle hummed with a sound that felt like a headache waiting to happen. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The graveyard shift, usually reserved for drunks, insomniacs, and the unfortunate souls whose bodies decided to fail when the sun went down. Scarlett Hayes stood by the supply cart, meticulously organizing IV kits. She was 32, though her eyes looked older. She wore generic blue scrubs that were a size too big, hiding a frame that was wiry and athletic. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun, and she wore zero makeup. She looked like a woman trying very hard to disappear. Hayes, I asked for a 4-0 suture, not a 3-0. Are you deaf or just incompetent? The voice boomed across Trauma Bay 2. Doctor. Brett Preston stood over a patient with a minor laceration, holding up a suture packet like it was a piece of rotting fruit. Preston was the golden boy of Mercy General Tall, jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and an ego that required its own zip code. He had attended Yale, drove a Porsche, and treated the nursing staff like furniture. Scarlett didn't flinch. She didn't even look up immediately. She finished placing a saline bag on the shelf, then walked over, calm and steady. The chart indicated the patient has a history of keloid scarring. Doctor, Scarlett said, her voice low and raspy, barely carrying over the beep of the monitors. A 3-0 might cause excessive tension. I grabbed the 5-0, actually. It's in your left tray. Preston froze. He looked down at the tray. There it was, a 5-0 nylon suture. Perfect for the job. He felt the heat rise up his neck. The other nurses, Jessica and Chloe, exchanged looks. They were part of Preston's fan club, a clique that ruled the ER floor with gossip and exclusions. I didn't ask for your opinion. Hayes, Preston snapped, snatching the packet. I asked for equipment. Next time, just do as you're told. You're a float nurse, not a surgeon. Know your place. Understood, Scarlett said. No sarcasm, no anger, just a flat acknowledgement. She turned and walked away. God, she's creepy, Jessica whispered loudly to Chloe as Scarlett passed the nurse's station. Does she ever smile? It's like working with a robot. I heard she got fired from her last job in Chicago for zoning out during a code. Chloe giggled, checking her phone. Probably true. She moves like she's underwater. Scarlett heard them. She always heard them. Her hearing had been tuned in environments far more hostile than a Seattle ER. The insults were static white noise. They didn't matter. What mattered was the rhythm of the room. She scanned the hallway, her eyes moving in a specific pattern, checking exits, checking the emotional state of the family in the waiting area, checking the grip of the security guard. Kevin, on his belt. Kevin was the only one who was nice to her. He was a retired beat cop, 50 pounds overweight, but with kind eyes. Rough night, Scarlett, Kevin asked as she passed the security desk to grab a coffee. Quiet night. Kevin, she corrected him. Quiet is good. Preston's on a warpath, Kevin muttered, leaning in. He's trying to get the chief of staff gig. He needs everything perfect. You annoys him. Me being me. Scarlett took a sip of the black, bitter sludge the hospital called coffee. You know, you don't fawn over him. You don't laugh at his jokes. You just work. Kevin paused. Where are you from, anyway? Scarlett personnel file says various locations. That's vague. I moved around a lot, Scarlett said, ending the conversation by turning her back. I need to check the inventory in Bay 4. Kevin watched her walk away. He had been a cop for 30 years. He knew how people walked. He knew the strut of a thug, the shuffle of an addict, and the confident stride of a businessman. Scarlett walked with a distinctive economy of motion. Her center of gravity was low. Her arms didn't swing much. It reminded him of something, but he couldn't quite place it. Later that night, the quiet broke. The ambulance bay doors hissed open, and the paramedics rushed in a gurney. Male, 40S, fall from a ladder. Compound fracture. Right tibia. BP is dropping. Preston was there instantly, barking orders. Get him to Bay 1, Jessica. Start a line, Chloe. Get X-ray down here. Scarlett hung back, watching. She wasn't assigned to the trauma team that night. She was on floor duty. But her eyes locked onto the patient. He was thrashing, pale, and sweating profusely. He's in shock, Preston yelled. Push fluids, 2 liters. Stat. Scarlett frowned. She took a step closer, staying in the shadows near the linen cart. She watched the patient's neck. The veins were distended. His breathing wasn't just labored, it was uneven, hitching on the left side. Doctor. Scarlett spoke up. She didn't shout, but her voice cut through the panic. Preston whipped around. Get out of here, Hayes. We're busy. His trachea is deviating, Scarlett said. It's not just a broken leg. He has a tension pneumothorax. If you push fluids without decompressing the chest, you'll kill him. The room went silent for a microsecond. I checked his lungs. They were clear, Preston shouted, his ego flaring. He fell 10 feet. It's a leg injury. Look at the jugular distension, Scarlett pointed. She didn't move to help. She knew better than to touch a patient without orders in this hostile environment. He hit the ladder on the way down. Rib fracture punctured the lung. He has about 30 seconds before cardiac arrest. Preston hesitated. He looked at the patient's neck. The veins were indeed bulging. He grabbed his stethoscope and jammed it onto the man's chest. Silence on the left side. Damn it, Preston swore. Needle 14 gauge. Now. Jessica fumbled with the drawer. She was shaking. The patient's monitor started to scream. Oxygen saturation plummeted to 82%. I can't find it. Jessica panicked. A hand reached past Jessica. It was Scarlett. She held the catheter needle. She didn't hand it to Preston. In one fluid motion, she located the second intercostal space on the patient's chest, sanitized the spot with a swipe of alcohol she had palmed seconds ago, and looked at Preston. Do it, Preston whispered, stunned by her speed. Scarlett drove the needle in. A loud hiss of escaping air filled the room. The patient gasped, a deep, rattling intake of breath. The monitor beeping slowed. The oxygen numbers began to climb. Scarlett capped the needle, taped it down, and stepped back. I'll go get the chest tube kit, she said softly. She walked out of the room before anyone could say a word. Jessica stared at the door. What the hell was that? Preston wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked at the needle. Perfectly placed. She got lucky, he muttered, though his hands were trembling. She just got lucky. Don't let her head get big about it. Write it up as my procedure. In the hallway, Scarlett leaned against the wall for a brief second. Closing her eyes, her heart rate hadn't gone above 60. It was just a needle decompression. She had done hundreds of them. Some in the back of Humvees, some in the mud, some while under fire. This was easy. The hard part was pretending it was the first time. The week following the needle incident was supposed to be better for Scarlett. It wasn't. If anything, it made a target on her back brighter. In the break room, the whispers stopped whenever she entered. Doctor, Preston, rather than being grateful she saved his patient, seemed to view her existence as an insult to his medical degree. He began scrutinizing her charting, looking for any misplaced comma or unchecked box. Hayes. Preston cornered her near the pharmacy station 3 nights later. I reviewed the logs from Tuesday. You didn't sign off on the disposal of the sharps container until 0400. Protocol says 0330. Scarlett looked up from her clipboard. I was helping a pediatric patient who was vomiting. Doctor, priorities. Protocol is priority. Preston sneered. He leaned in close, his expensive cologne overpowering the smell of antiseptic. You think you're special because you stuck a needle in a guy. You're a cowboy. Cowboys get people killed. I'm watching you. One slip-up, one real mistake, and I'll have your license. I have friends on the nursing board. Is that all, Doctor? Scarlett asked, her face impassive. Clean the supply closet. It's a mess. He dismissed her. Scarlett went to the supply closet. It was humiliating work for a senior nurse, usually reserved for volunteers or orderlies. But she did it. She reorganized the gauze, the saline, the intubation kits. As she worked, her mind drifted. She remembered the heat of the Afghan summer, the smell of burning diesel and copper blood. She remembered him, Lieutenant Commander Mark Hutchinson. He had bled out in her arms because the medevac chopper took fire and couldn't land. She remembered promising herself she'd never let ego or bureaucracy get in the way of saving a life again. That was why she left the service. That was why she chose this small life. No rank, no salutes, just the medicine. But the medicine here was poisoned by politics. Hey. A voice broke her trance. It was Kevin, the security guard. He stood in the doorway of the supply closet. You okay? Scarlett Preston is riding you hard. I'm fine, Kevin. Listen. Kevin lowered his voice. I was talking to a buddy of mine. Works background checks for the county. Just shooting the breeze. I mentioned you. Just said we had a new nurse who was quiet as a mouse, but had hands like a surgeon. Scarlett stiffened. She stopped stacking the boxes. Why would you do that? Kevin. Just making conversation. But here's the weird thing. Kevin scratched his head. He couldn't find you. I mean, he found Scarlett Hayes. But your file, it's like Swiss cheese. Gaps. Big gaps. From 2014 to 2020, you didn't exist. No taxes, no rental history, nothing. Just a P.O. box in Virginia. Scarlett turned slowly. Her eyes, usually dull and avoidant, locked onto Kevin's with an intensity that made the large man take a step back. Kevin, don't dig. I'm just saying, Kevin stammered. If you're in trouble, you know, running from an ex or something, I can help. I'm not running from an ex, Scarlett said, her voice dropping an octave. Please, for your own sake, stop asking questions. Kevin swallowed hard. Okay. Okay. Sorry. He left, unsettled. He had seen that look before. Not on a nurse. On the guys he arrested for homicide who knew they weren't getting out. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose. The shift dragged on. At 3 a.m., the ER doors burst open again. This time, it wasn't a medical emergency. Help him, man! 2 men stumbled in, dragging a third between them. They were wearing leather biker cuts. The Iron Kings, a local motorcycle gang known for methamphetamine distribution and violence. The man in the middle was clutching his stomach, blood pouring through his fingers. "Gunshot wound," Jessica screamed from the triage desk. "Security." Kevin rushed over, hand on his taser. "Gentlemen, I need you to step back." "Back off." Rent-a-Cop, the largest biker, roared. He was a giant, easily 6'4", with a beard like a bird's nest and eyes pinned with adrenaline. He pulled a serrated hunting knife from his belt. "You fix my brother right now, or I start carving people up." The ER froze. Panic was immediate. Jessica ducked behind the desk. Dr. Preston, who had been sipping coffee, dropped his cup. He stood paralyzed near Bay 3. "Sir." "Put the weapon down," Kevin said, his voice shaking. He drew his taser, but he was too far away for a clean shot. "Fix him." The biker lunged at a young orderly, grabbing him by the scrubs and pressing the knife to his throat. "Doctor now." Preston stepped forward, hands raised, trembling violently. Okay. Put the knife down. We can help him. Just let the boy go." "You come here and fix him," the biker screamed, spitting blood and saliva. Preston couldn't move. Fear rooted him to the spot. The patient on the floor was groaning, pooling blood on the linoleum. Scarlett emerged from the supply closet. She didn't run. She walked. That same rhythmic, predatory walk. She held a trauma pad in her left hand. "He's bleeding out," Scarlett said calmly, walking straight toward the man with the knife. "Stay back." "Bitch," the biker yelled, waving the knife away from the orderly and toward Scarlett. "Scarlett, no," Kevin shouted. Scarlett didn't stop. She looked the biker in the eyes. "Your friend has a perforated bowel, maybe the abdominal aorta. If I don't pack that wound in 60 seconds, he dies. Do you want to kill your brother, or do you want to let me work?" The biker hesitated. The calmness in her face confused him. He was used to fear. He thrived on it. But this small woman in oversized scrubs looked at him like he was a minor inconvenience, like a traffic jam. "I'll cut you," he threatened, though the knife wavered. "If you cut me," Scarlett said, now standing 2 feet from him, "I can't stop the bleeding, and he dies. Put the knife away. Now." It wasn't a request. It was a command. The tone was different than anything the hospital staff had heard. It possessed an absolute, terrifying authority. The biker blinked. The adrenaline rush faltered in the face of her icy composure. Slowly, he lowered the knife. "If he dies, you die," he growled. "Move," Scarlett said, pushing past him. She knelt beside the wounded man. "Preston, get over here," she barked. She didn't call him doctor. She used his last name, like a drill instructor. Preston snapped out of his trance and rushed over. "Apply pressure here." Scarlett guided Preston's hands, then looked at the bikers. "You two. Get out. Wait in the lot. Kevin, lock the doors behind them." The bikers looked at her, then at their bleeding friend. They turned and left. As soon as the doors clicked shut, the tension broke. Preston was hyperventilating as they lifted the patient onto a gurney. "Ore is prepped," Scarlett said, stripping off her bloody gloves. "Get him up there." Preston looked at her, his face pale. You could have gotten us killed. I saved your patient, Scarlett said. You provoked a violent psychopath. Preston's fear turned instantly to anger, his defense mechanism kicking in. You violated safety protocol. You're supposed to wait for police. He would have bled out before the cops arrived. Scarlett replied. You're reckless, Preston shouted, his voice echoing in the now silent EOR. You think you're some kind of hero. You're a liability. I'm writing you up. Insubordination. Endangering staff. You're done. Hayes, I'm going to the board, first thing in the morning. Scarlett looked at him. For a moment, a flash of something dangerous crossed her eyes, a flicker of the warrior she used to be. But she tamped it down. Do what you have to do, Doctor, she said. She walked away to the break room to wash the biker's blood off her hands. But she knew Preston wasn't bluffing this time. Her cover was fraying. The quiet nurse act was failing. And she had a bad feeling that the biker gang incident was just the prelude. The real storm was coming, and it was coming from the sky. The morning sun did nothing to warm the sterile coldness of the hospital administration office. It was 8:00 a.m., and the adrenaline from the previous night's biker incident had curdled into a thick, bureaucratic tension. Scarlett sat in a plush leather chair that felt too soft, too comfortable for an interrogation. Across from her sat Linda Garris, the hospital administrator, a woman whose face was etched with the permanent stress of budget cuts and liability lawsuits. Next to Garris sat Dr. Preston, looking fresh, showered, and smug. He had already spun his narrative. Miss Hayes, Garris began, adjusting her glasses. Doctor, Preston has filed a formal complaint regarding your conduct last night. He alleges that you not only violated safety protocols by engaging with an armed assailant, but that you also undermined the attending physician's authority during a critical trauma case. Scarlett looked at Preston. He wouldn't meet her eyes. He was studying a folder on the desk, feigning interest in the paperwork. The patient had a perforated bowel and a severed femoral artery. Ma'am, Scarlett said, her voice flat. The assailants were agitated. Waiting for police intervention would have resulted in the patient's death and likely escalated the violence against the staff. I de-escalated the situation. You provoked a man holding a knife, Preston snapped, finally looking up. You played hero, and you got lucky. Mercy General is not a battlefield. Hayes, you can't just go rogue because you feel like it. Garris held up a hand to silence Preston. She pulled a file from the stack. That's not the only issue. Scarlett, after the incident. Doctor, Preston raised some concerns about your background. He felt your skill set didn't match your file. Scarlett remained perfectly still. My file is in order. Is it? Garris opened the folder. We ran a secondary verification this morning. The nursing school in Ohio you listed. They have a record of a Scarlett Hayes, but the graduation year is off by 2 years, and the reference from Chicago. The number goes to a disconnected line. We tried to pull your tax records for a background audit, and, well, it's complicated. It seems you're a ghost. Scarlett. Clerical errors, Scarlett said. It was a weak defense, and she knew it. The cover was blown. The identity created by the redacted agency she used to work for was good, but it wasn't designed to withstand a vendetta by a narcissist doctor with friends in HR. We can't have ghosts working in the ER, Garris said, closing the file with a finality that echoed in the room. Until this is cleared up, and pending the review of the safety violation, You are placed on immediate unpaid suspension. Please surrender your badge." Preston smiled. It was a small, tight victory smile. He had won. The weird, quiet nurse who made him look bad was gone. Scarlett didn't argue. She stood up, unclipped her badge, and placed it on the mahogany desk. "You're making a mistake," she said. "Not about me, but about the security. We have Kevin and the security team." Preston scoffed. "We don't need a nurse playing Rambo." "The bikers last night," Scarlett said, ignoring him and looking at Garris. "They weren't just angry about their friend. They were scared. The man I worked on. He whispered something to me before he went under anesthesia. He said, 'Don't let them find the drive.' He swallowed something. If his crew realizes they don't have it, they'll be back." "That sounds like paranoia," Garris said, dismissing her. "Please clear out your locker. Ms. Hayes, security will escort you out." Scarlett turned and walked out. She felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. She could pack her bag, move to the next town, change her name to Emily or Kate, and start over. It was the life she had chosen. She went to the locker room, emptying her few possessions into a canvas bag, a stethoscope, a spare change of clothes, and a worn paperback novel. She was just zipping the bag when the alarm started. It wasn't the fire alarm. It was the code silver alarm. Active shooter. Pop, pop, pop. The distinct, sharp crack of semi-automatic fire echoed from the ambulance bay. Scarlett froze. Her hand hovered over her locker. The relief vanished, replaced instantly by a cold, familiar combat focus. The door to the locker room burst open. Jessica, the nurse who had mocked her, stumbled in, sobbing. They're shooting everyone." "Who?" Scarlett grabbed Jessica by the shoulders, shaking her hard. "Focus! Who is shooting?" "The bikers," Jessica wailed. "The Iron Kings. They drove a truck through the glass doors. They have guns. They're looking for the patient." Scarlett cursed under her breath. She checked the hallway. Chaos. Patients were screaming, running blindly. Security guard Kevin was down near the nurse's station, clutching his leg. "Stay here," Scarlett ordered Jessica. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone unless you hear my voice." "Where are you going?" Jessica cried, clutching Scarlett's scrub top. "You're suspended. You have to leave." "I'm not a nurse right now," Scarlett said, peeling Jessica's fingers off. "And I'm not leaving." Scarlett slipped out into the corridor. She moved differently now. The slouch was gone. She moved low, hugging the walls, checking to corners. She wasn't walking to the exit. She was moving toward the gunfire. The ER had been transformed into a kill box. The Iron Kings had come in force, 6 men, armed with illegal modifiers on AR-15 platforms and shotguns. They had secured the main exits and were herding the staff and patients into the main triage area. Bronson, the bearded giant from the night before, was barking orders. He looked more unhinged than before. "Nobody leaves until we get what is ours. We know he swallowed it. We want the drive. Doctor." Preston was cowering behind the main desk, his white coat stained with coffee he had spilled in the panic. He was trembling so violently, his teeth were chattering. "You—" Bronson pointed the barrel of his rifle at Preston. "You're the boss." "Right." The fancy doctor. I... Preston stammered, his hands raised. "Please, I just work here. Take whatever you want. Drugs, we have oxycodone, fentanyl. Take it. I don't want your pills, junkie." Bronson smashed the butt of the rifle into Preston's face. Preston crumbled, blood gushing from his nose. He curled into a ball, sobbing. The god of the ER was reduced to a weeping child. The nurses, Chloe, Mark, and the others watched in horror. Their leader had broken. There was no one to save them. Bronson grabbed a terrified elderly patient by the hospital gown. "I'm going to start executing people every 5 minutes until someone tells me where my brother is and where his personal effects are." From the shadows of the linen closet. Scarlett watched. She did a quick tactical assessment. 6 hostiles, heavy weapons, civilians everywhere. No police presence yet. They were likely setting up a perimeter outside, which meant at least 20 minutes before a SWAT breach. By then, Bronson would have killed half the room. She had no weapon. Improvise. Scarlett looked at the crash cart next to her. Defibrillator, scalpels, ethanol, oxygen tanks. She needed to separate them. She saw one of the bikers, a skinny guy with a twitchy eye, guarding the hallway leading to the pharmacy. He was isolated, about 20 feet from the main group. Scarlett picked up a glass vial of saline and threw it hard down the opposite corridor. Smash! "What was that?" Bronson yelled. "Knox, check it out." The skinny biker, Knox, turned and walked toward the noise. "Probably just a rat," he muttered, racking the slide of his shotgun. He passed the linen closet. Scarlett moved. She didn't make a sound. She stepped out, grabbed the barrel of the shotgun with her left hand, pointing it at the ceiling, and drove the palm of her right hand into his chin. His head snapped back. Before he could scream, she swept his legs and drove a knee into his solar plexus. He folded. Scarlett dragged him into the closet. She stripped him of the shotgun and a large hunting knife. She checked the weapon. 4 shells. 4 shells. 5 targets left. She looked at Knox, who was gasping for air on the floor. She leaned down, her face inches from his. "How many outside? Go to hell!" Knox wheezed. Scarlett pressed her thumb into a pressure point behind his ear. He shrieked in agony. "How many?" 2 drivers. "Good nap," she whispered. She applied a sleeper hold, cutting off blood flow to the carotid artery. Knox went limp in 6 seconds. Scarlett took the shotgun. It felt familiar, heavy, reassuring. She moved back to the edge of the triage area. The situation was deteriorating. Bronson was losing patience. He had grabbed Chloe by the hair and was dragging her toward the trauma rooms. "Show me the body," Bronson screamed. "Cut him open if you have to." Preston was still on the floor. Useless. Scarlett knew she couldn't take all 5 in a firefight without hitting civilians. She needed a distraction. A big one. Her eyes landed on the main oxygen supply valve on the wall. If she ruptured the line, the escaping gas would create a deafening hiss and a visual fog. But it was flammable. One spark and the whole ER would blow. Risk assessment high. Alternative Chloe dies. Scarlett made the choice. She holstered the shotgun on her back and grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. She stepped into the light. "Hey!" she shouted. The entire room froze. Bronson spun around, still holding Chloe. "It's the nurse!" One of the bikers laughed. "The little mouse." Scarlett stood in the middle of the hallway, holding the fire extinguisher like a battering ram. "Let her go. Bronson, your brother is in the morgue. The police are outside. This ends with you in cuffs or a body bag." "You got a lot of lip for a janitor," Bronson sneered. "Kill her." 2 bikers raised their rifles. Scarlett didn't wait. She didn't dodge. She pulled the pin on the extinguisher and hurled it not at the bikers, but at the ceiling, hitting the sprinkler system trigger. Snap. The glass bulb broke. The emergency sprinklers exploded. Water rained down in a torrent. The sudden noise and the deluge disoriented the bikers. They looked up, cursing. "Can't shoot what you can't see," Scarlett yelled. She dropped to the wet floor and slid like a baseball player, closing the distance to the nearest biker. She used the momentum to sweep his legs. As he fell, she grabbed his rifle barrel, twisted it, and delivered a palm strike to his nose. Bone crunched. She had his AR-15 now. "Contact front!" Bronson screamed, blindly firing into the spray. Bullets shattered the glass of the nurse's station. Scarlett rolled behind the concrete pillar. She had a weapon. She had the element of chaos. "Preston!" Scarlett yelled over the roar of the water and gunfire. "Get the patients to the back, move!" Preston looked up, blinking through the water. He saw Scarlett. She wasn't the mouse anymore. She was holding an assault rifle with a grip that was perfect, her eyes scanning the room with terrifying precision. "Move!" she roared, a command voice that brooked no argument. Preston scrambled up, grabbing patients. Go to the back." Bronson saw his hostages escaping. "Stop them." He turned his weapon toward the fleeing crowd. Scarlett stepped out from behind the pillar. She didn't spray and pray. She took a breath, centered her sight picture, and fired. Bang! The biker aiming at the crowd dropped, hit in the shoulder. Bang! The second biker took a round to the leg. "Cover fire!" Bronson screamed, retreating behind the triage desk. The remaining two bikers opened up on Scarlett's position. Bullets chipped away the concrete pillar. She was pinned down. "I'm out of ammo," she shouted to herself. The magazine she had taken was nearly empty. She looked around. She was trapped. 3 hostiles left. Bronson and 2 others. They were flanking her. Suddenly, the PA system crackled. "This is the Seattle Police Department. Drop your weapons." "They're bluffing," Bronson yelled. "Frag the bitch." One of the bikers pulled a grenade, a homemade pipe bomb, from his vest. Scarlett's eyes went wide. If that went off in the enclosed space, everyone died. She needed to close the distance. Now. She dropped the empty rifle and drew the hunting knife she had taken from Knox. She sprinted. It was suicide. A nurse with a knife charging 3 gunmen. But she wasn't running at them. She was running at the wall panel, the main breaker for the ER lights. Bullets whizzed past her. One grazed her arm, a hot sting of fire. She hit the panel. She yanked the master lever down. Click. Darkness. Absolute. Pitch black. The emergency lights hadn't kicked in yet. The shooting stopped. The bikers were blind. But Scarlett wasn't. She had spent years operating in the dark. She closed her eyes and listened, breathing to the left. Heavy boots on tile to the right. The metallic click of a lighter. Bronson was trying to light the fuse on the pipe bomb. Scarlett moved. She was a shadow within a shadow. She tackled the man with the lighter. The pipe bomb skittered across the floor, unlit. She didn't punch. She used joint manipulation. A scream echoed in the dark as a wrist snapped. "Where is she?" Bronson panicked. "Shoot everything." The emergency red lights flickered on, bathing the ER in a blood-colored glow. Scarlett stood in the center of the room. 2 bikers were down, writhing in pain. Bronson was the only one left standing. He swung his rifle toward her. Scarlett stood 5 feet away. She held the knife in a reverse grip. She was panting slightly, blood dripping from her arm, her wet hair plastered to her face. "Put it down," she said. "I'll kill you," Bronson screamed. "You're already dead." A deep, booming voice came from the shattered entrance. Bronson froze. Standing in the rain, framed by the broken doors, were 4 men. They weren't police. They weren't SWAT. They wore tactical gear, but no insignias. They moved with the same fluid, dangerous grace as Scarlet. The man in the lead, a towering figure with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. He raised a suppressed carbine. "Drop it," the man said, "or I drop you." Bronson looked at the men, then at Scarlet. He realized, too late, that he had walked into a wolf's den. He dropped the rifle. Scarlet didn't relax. She looked at the man in the doorway. "Took you long enough. Miller," she said. The man, Miller, lowered his weapon slightly. A grin broke his stoic face. "Traffic was a bitch. Commander, you okay?" "I'm fine," Scarlet said, finally letting her shoulders drop. Preston, peeking out from behind a gurney, stared. Commander Miller walked over to Scarlet, ignoring the chaos, ignoring the police sirens finally wailing in the distance. He looked at her scrubs, soaked in water and blood. "We got the signal," Miller said. "The distress beacon in your watch. We came as fast as we could. The Admiral is on the line. He wants to know why his best asset is playing nursemaid in Seattle." Scarlet looked at Preston, who was staring at her with a mix of awe and terror. "I was just trying to have a quiet life." "Miller," she said. Miller laughed, kicking Bronson's rifle away. "You quiet, Commander. A Black Hawk is landing on the roof in 5 minutes. We need you, and I don't think your cover is holding up anymore." As if on cue, the sound of heavy rotors thumping against the air shook the building. The wind whipped the rain into a frenzy. It wasn't a medevac chopper. It was a darker, sleeker bird. A ghost hawk. Scarlet looked at the hospital, the place where she had been mocked, belittled, and underestimated. She looked at Preston, the small man who had tried to ruin her. "I guess the shift is over," she said. She turned to Miller. "Let's go." But Preston stood up. "Wait, you can't just leave the police. The board. Who are you?" Scarlet paused. She turned back one last time. The red emergency light caught the sharp angles of her face. "I'm the nurse you fired. Doctor," she said. Then she walked out into the rain, flanked by her team, leaving the wreckage of her quiet life behind. The interior of the Ghost Hawk helicopter smelled of hydraulic fluid, wet tactical gear, and the distinct, metallic scent of ozone. It was a smell Scarlet hadn't realized she missed until the vibration of the rotors rattled her teeth. She sat on the jump seat, a thermal blanket draped over her wet scrubs, looking out the open bay door as the lights of Seattle faded into a blur of rain-streaked neon. Miller handed her a headset. "Put it on. We're 5 minutes out from the USS Carl Vinson. The Admiral didn't want to wait for a secure line." Scarlet pulled the headset over her ears. The static hissed, then cleared. "Commander Bennett." A gravelly voice came through. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "Admiral Graves," Scarlet replied, her voice shifting. The softness of Nurse Hayes was gone, replaced by the clipped, precise tone of a Tier 1 operator. "I thought I was retired. The deal was I disappear, you lose my file. Deals change when the threat level escalates." "Scarlet," Admiral Graves replied, "we didn't pull you out just to save you from a lawsuit and a biker gang. We pulled you out because that biker gang, the Iron Kings, they aren't just meth dealers. They're a distribution network." "Distribution for what?" Scarlet asked, wiping a smear of blood from her cheek. "For Chimera," Graves said. Scarlet felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold rain. Chimera was a myth, a whisper in the intelligence community, a binary biological weapon harmless in 2 separate parts, but lethal when combined. It caused total organ failure within minutes, mimicking a massive stroke. Untraceable. Unstoppable. I thought Chimera was destroyed in Syria 4 years ago, Scarlett said, gripping the nylon webbing of the seat. So did we, Graves said. But the patient you treated tonight, the one who swallowed the drive, he wasn't just a biker. He was a mule. The drive he swallowed contains the encryption keys for the final shipment. The Iron Kings didn't know what they had. They just knew it was worth millions. But the buyers, they know. Who are the buyers? We don't know yet. That's why we need you. The drop is scheduled for 600 hours tomorrow. The location is an abandoned deep-sea rig off the coast. It's a fortress. We can't just bomb it. If the canisters rupture, the fallout hits the coast. We need a surgical insertion. We need someone who can identify the chemical markers and neutralize the threat without triggering a release. You have SEAL teams for that. Scarlett argued. You have Delta. They don't have your background. Graves countered. Before you were a shooter, you were a combat medic with a specialization in bio-warfare. You wrote the manual on Chimera containment. Scarlett, you're the only one who can disarm the dispersion unit if it's active. The helicopter banked hard, the dark water of the Puget Sound rushing up to meet them. In the distance, the massive silhouette of the aircraft carrier cut through the fog. I'm a nurse, Admiral, Scarlett said quietly. I fix people. I don't kill them anymore. You did both tonight, Graves said, his voice softening slightly. I saw the security footage. Scarlett, you haven't lost a step. You saved that hospital. Now I'm asking you to save the city. One last time, then you can go back to being invisible. I'll even get you a new identity, a better one where you don't have to take orders from arrogant doctors. The helicopter touched down on the flight deck with a heavy thud. The ramp lowered. A team of support crew rushed forward, heads bowed against the rotor wash. Miller unbuckled his harness and looked at her. He's right. You know, if that stuff gets out, Mercy General won't be dealing with trauma. They'll be dealing with mass casualties. Thousands. Scarlett looked at her hands. They were still stained with the blood of the biker she had treated. The same hands that had saved a life were now being asked to end others. She stood up, letting the thermal blanket fall. Get me a shower, Scarlett said, stepping onto the deck. And get me my gear. Miller grinned. Welcome back, Ghost. Inside the carrier, the transition was jarring. She went from the chaotic, uncontrolled environment of the ER to the rigid, metallic order of the Navy. Sailors moved with purpose, officers saluted, but they all paused when they saw her, a woman in bloody scrubs, walking flanked by special warfare operators. She was taken to the armory, a locker with her old call sign. Wraith was waiting. Inside. There were no scrubs. There was a black tactical wetsuit, a plate carrier, and a customized Mk-18 carbine. Scarlett stripped off the blue cotton. She looked at herself in the small mirror on the locker door. The bruises from the fight in the ER were already forming. She traced the scar on her shoulder from Kabul. She began to dress. The ritual was grounding. Base layer, Kevlar, ceramics. She checked the seals on her gas mask. She loaded the magazines, tapping them against her helmet to settle the rounds. When she turned around, she wasn't Scarlett Hayes, the float nurse who took abuse from Dr. Preston. She was Commander Scarlett Bennett. Miller was waiting for her in the briefing room. The team is prepped. We have 2 hours until insertion. We're going in via submersible. What's the ROE? Scarlett asked, checking the action on her sidearm. Strict, Miller said. No leaks. Hostiles are considered expendable, but the canisters must remain intact. "Let's get it done," Scarlett said. As they walked to the hangar bay, a young medic ran up to them, holding a clipboard. He looked terrified of the fully geared operators. "Ma'am, Commander," he stammered. "Medical check is mandatory before deployment." Miller started to wave him off, but Scarlett stopped. She looked at the kid. He reminded her of herself 10 years ago. "Check my vitals," she said, holding out her arm. The medic wrapped the cuff. He listened to her heart. He frowned, tapping the gauge. Then listened again. "Is there a problem, Corpsman?" Scarlett asked. Your heart rate." "Ma'am," the medic stuttered. "It's 48 beats per minute. Are you okay?" Scarlett smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. "I'm not nervous, son. I'm just calibrated." She patted him on the shoulder and walked onto the ramp of the waiting transport plane. The nurse was gone. The operator was awake. The insertion was silent and freezing. The SDV glided through the black water beneath the oil rig, surfacing in the internal moon pool. Scarlett moved first, her boots making no sound on the rusted grating as she signaled the team up. They weren't in the chaotic brawl of the ER anymore. This was surgery. They stacked up at the first blast door. Scarlett checked the fiber optic feed. 3 hostiles inside Obsidian PMC, high-end mercenaries. "On my mark," she whispered. 3, 2, 1. They breached. Suppressors coughed in unison. Thwip, thwip, thwip. The guards dropped before they could raise their rifles. Scarlett moved immediately to the target crate. She cracked the seal, revealing the silver canisters nestled in foam. Her blood ran cold. "Problem," she hissed. "There are slots for 6. 2 are missing." "Command." Miller keyed his radio. "We have partial secure. 2 units in the wind." Admiral Graves's voice cut through the static. Tense. Satellite shows a chopper spooling up on the helipad. If those canisters leave the rig, they disappear forever. "Move." Scarlett abandoned stealth. They sprinted up the stairwells, boots clanging on metal. Alarms began to blare, washing the rig in disorienting red strobes. As they breached the upper deck, gunfire erupted from the gantry. "Contact!" Miller yelled, returning fire. He took a heavy hit to the chest plate, stumbling backward. "Man down!" Jones screamed, dragging him to cover. Scarlett looked past them. The executive helicopter was already 5 feet off the ground, banking away from the pad. She had no clear shot, and the mercenaries were pinning them down. She holstered her rifle and sprinted, not for cover, but for the construction crane adjacent to the pad. Bullets sparked off the steel railing as she climbed the ladder. Ignoring the scream of the wind, she smashed the glass of the cab and grabbed the controls. The helicopter was gathering speed, turning toward the open ocean. Scarlett swung the crane arm. It was simple physics. Clang! The heavy steel hook smashed into the helicopter's tail rotor. The machine screamed, spinning violently out of control before crashing hard onto the edge of the deck. Scarlett jumped from the cab, rolling as she hit the steel. She dragged the buyer from the twisted wreckage. He was clutching a reinforced briefcase, his face bloody. "You're insane!" he screamed. "Do you know how much this is worth?" Scarlett pistol whipped him into silence. Jones secured the briefcase. 2 canisters, intact, package secure. Miller limped over, winded but alive. He rifled through the unconscious buyer's pockets and pulled out a plastic keycard. He frowned, holding it up to the emergency light. "This isn't a cartel buyer," Miller said. "This ID, it's a contractor clearance. For Aegis Medical Systems." Scarlett froze. The adrenaline drained away, replaced by a cold realization. Aegis, she whispered. That's the parent company of Mercy General. The pieces clicked together. The biker gang wasn't random. The hospital wasn't just a victim. It was a testing ground. Preston, Scarlett realized, her voice hard. He wasn't just arrogant. He was scared. He knew something. Mission complete, Commander, Miller said, looking at the extraction bird descending from the clouds. We have the gas. Scarlett looked at the dark horizon, back toward Seattle. The mission isn't done, she said, tightening her gloves. If Aegis is behind this, then Mercy General is a loose end they need to tie up. They're going to burn it down to hide the evidence. Your friends are there, Miller noted. I don't have friends, Scarlett said, turning back to the team. I have patients, and nobody kills my patients but me. We're going back. The flight back to Mercy General was silent, a stark contrast to the chaos awaiting them. Scarlett sat on the ramp of the Ghost Hawk, methodically cleaning the salt spray from her rifle. The nurse Hayes, who had quietly endured insults, was gone. Commander Bennett was fully online. We're 10 mics out, the pilot announced. Command says Aegis Private Security has locked down the facility. They're claiming a biological contamination event to keep witnesses inside. Miller grimaced. They're scrubbing the site. They're going to kill everyone who saw the bikers' nurses, doctors, patients. Scarlett slammed a fresh magazine into her weapon. Not if we get there first. The helicopter didn't land. It hovered 50 feet above the roof, the rotor wash whipping the rain into a frenzy. Fast rope. Miller yelled. Scarlett dropped first, hitting the wet gravel with a heavy thud. Her team, Miller, Jones, and 2 others landed behind her. 5 ghosts against a corporate army. They breached the stairwell, moving silently toward the 4th floor. The heart of the administration suite. Through the wire mesh glass of the landing, Scarlett saw the hallway lined with armed men in black tactical gear. They weren't police. They were cleaners, setting charges on the structural pillars. They're going to bring the building down, Jones hissed. Clear the floor, Scarlett ordered. I'm going for the conference room. That's where the hostages are. She didn't wait. Scarlett kicked the door open, her weapon raised. The hallway erupted. Miller and Jones laid down suppressing fire, their movements precise and lethal, dropping the mercenaries before they could trigger the explosives. Scarlett sprinted through the smoke toward the heavy mahogany doors at the end of the hall. Open the door, she yelled, banging on the wood. Go away! Jessica's terrified voice screamed from inside. They said they'll kill us. Jessica, it's Hayes, Scarlett roared. Open the damn door, or I'm kicking it in. A barricade was dragged away, and the door cracked open. Scarlett pushed inside. The room was a tableau of fear. Nurses and doctors huddled under the long table. Doctor. Preston sat in the corner, head in his hands, weeping. Administrator Garris stood by the window, a gun pressed to her temple by a man in a tailored grey suit. It was Strickland, the Aegis regional director, the man who signed the paychecks. Drop it, Strickland, Scarlett said, leveling her rifle at his face. We have the Chimera canisters. It's over. You have nothing, Strickland spat, sweat dripping down his pale face. This is bigger than a hospital. We had a contract. The contract is terminated, Scarlett said, stepping closer. Stay back. Strickland pressed the muzzle harder into Garris's skin. You're just a nurse. You wash bedpans. You don't have the guts to shoot me. Scarlett's expression was stone. I'm not a nurse today. Doctor. Preston, Strickland yelled, desperate for a shield. Get over here, block the door, or I kill her. Preston looked up, his eyes red and swollen. He looked at the gun, then at Scarlett. For years, he had been the bully, the golden boy who treated Scarlett like furniture. But seeing the mouse standing there in full combat gear, something shifted in him. The cowardice broke. Preston stood up. He walked toward Strickland, his hands trembling but his chin high. "Sit down, Doctor!" Strickland screamed. "She told you to drop it," Preston said, his voice shaking but loud enough to fill the room. Strickland turned his gun slightly toward Preston. "I said sit down. That split second of distraction was all Scarlett needed. She didn't shoot Strickland. She fired a single round into the glass pane behind him. The window shattered. The violent wind from the helicopter rotors roared into the room, a sudden, deafening gust. Strickland flinched, instinctively shielding his eyes. Scarlett crossed the room in a blur. She grabbed Strickland's gun hand, twisting it upward until the bone snapped with a sickening crack. He screamed, dropping the weapon. She swept his legs, slamming him onto the conference table and pinning him with her forearm against his throat. "You're right," Scarlett whispered into his ear. "I do wash bedpans, and I know exactly how much pressure it takes to crush a larynx. Give the order to stand down." Strickland gurgled, tapping the table frantically. Scarlett eased the pressure. "Stand down," he wheezed into his lapel mic. "All units. It's over." The tension in the room broke. Jessica and Chloe crawled out from under the table, staring at Scarlett with wide, unbelieving eyes. The baggy scrubs were gone. The slouch was gone. Standing there in Kevlar, blood on her face, she looked like a deity of war. "Scarlett," Jessica whispered. "Who are you?" Scarlett holstered her weapon. "I'm just the float nurse." Miller kicked the door open. "Clear. Commander, FBI is 5 minutes out. We need to vanish before the suits show up." Scarlett nodded and turned to leave. "Wait." Preston called out. Scarlett stopped. Preston didn't have a snappy comeback or an insult. He extended his hand. "Thank you," he said. "Commander." Scarlett looked at his hand, then shook it firmly. "Check your suture technique. Doctor, it's still sloppy." Preston laughed, a choked, hysterical sound. "I'll work on it." Scarlett turned to Miller. "Let's go." As the Ghost Hawk lifted off the roof, Scarlett watched the lights of Mercy General fade below them. Police cruisers surrounded the building, red and blue lights flashing in the rain. "So," Miller yelled over the headset, "the Admiral has a spot open on Team 6. Says it's yours." Scarlett looked at the city below. She thought about the adrenaline, but also the quiet moments of healing. "I don't think I can go back to the Navy." "Miller," she said, leaning back. "But tell the Admiral, if he has any other hospitals that need cleaning up, to give me a call." Miller grinned. "Copy that. The consultant. I like it." Scarlett closed her eyes. The mouse was dead, but Scarlett Hayes was just getting started. The story of Scarlett Hayes reminds us that the quietest people in the room are often the ones you should worry about the most. Doctor. Preston and the staff at Mercy General judged Scarlett based on her silence and her job title, never realizing that the woman scrubbing the floors was the only thing standing between them and total destruction. It's a powerful lesson in humility and respect. You never know who is walking beside you, or what battles they have fought just to be there. In a world obsessed with noise and ego, sometimes true power is the ability to stay calm when the storm hits. If you enjoyed this story of hidden heroes and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends to see if they can guess the twist, and subscribe for more dramatic storytelling every week. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.